Okay, so a lot of people have been clowning Perkz on his 0-7-0 performance on renekton mid a couple of weeks ago, and some are crazy enough to be calling for him to be benched for such a horrid performance, but I want to show you why Perkz going 0-7 shows his knowledge and dominance of this game. And remember, this isn't a random scrub. Perkz is arguably the best Western mid laner we've ever seen, and is also one of the most decorated players in the Western regions as well. And this single performance can clue us into how he views the game and how you can improve your game even by watching a 0-kill participation game that turned into a blowout. Hey guys, my name is Snowta and I make videos on how to get better at League of Legends, so if you enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. Also, if you want even more content like this and want to figure out how to climb ranked in League, then check out my course, The Ticket to Diamond Blueprint. The link is in the description below. Okay, so before we deep dive into Perkz' deaths, let's take a look at the draft to figure out C9's game plan going into this game. Right off the bat, we see that C9 prioritizes renekton enough to first pick it here, and that's for two simple reasons. The first is that renekton, prior to receiving multiple nerfs here in the middle of season 11, was very strong to the point that pro top laners were complaining about his dominance. And the second reason is that it's a good flex pick into some mid lane matchups, and that's what they end up doing here. It also enables a favorable early mid jungle matchup against Xin Zhao and Karma. Well, at least it's supposed to. Another thing to understand about renekton mid is that it's great into the current meta of melee mid laners. Yone, Yasuo, Zed, Diana, Viego, Lee Sin. He's great into all of them, and my guess was that they were trying to bait a Lee Sin pick and then draft their top laner last to have an advantage in both lanes, but unfortunately they drafted Karma and Braum, which both have great disengage, which is renekton's Achilles heel. So when it comes to draft, C9 had a good plan, but they didn't ban Karma, which was really tough for renekton in both lanes. In theory, if he gets ganks and uses his empowered W, it can turn out well, but as you can see here, if they don't take advantage of that, Karma just scales way better. Although their draft plan didn't seem to go as planned, it didn't seem to phase C9 too much because they are still wanting to execute their plan by using renekton W to set up massive burst from the mid jungle duo. So in this gank, the wave is in the perfect spot. Blabber is coming from behind the wave to make it easier to hit his Q because there's going to be less minions in the way. Now, one of two things can happen when she chooses to run down instead of going to her tower. The first is that Xin Zhao is ganking from the bottom river and it's a bait. Or Karma knows that she can't make it to her tower because there's no minions to block the Nidalee Q, so she has to run down to pretend that Xin Zhao is in the river. Now this is what Perkz guesses and is unfortunately wrong, but the play still makes sense. Karma gets a shield and increased movement speed from her W, so he first wards the bush and then flashes in with over 50 fury, which will give him his empowered stun, which will keep her in place for the follow-up Nidalee damage, but also get rid of the shield that she just enabled. This would have certainly been a kill and maybe even turned into a double kill if Perkz didn't do something just so unfortunate. He flash stunned the ward. My guy, the best mid laner in the West, flash stunned a ward, getting himself killed. This is just so sad. And to make matters worse, because he used his empowered W on the ward, he didn't have enough fury to heal off of his Q, and since his E was already on cooldown from trying to gap close, his abilities are just super useless and he dies. But hey, that stuff happens, right? Blabber was able to get out and he didn't lose a massive wave, so they should be able to get some sort of lead back if they can find another opportunity. Well, Perkz' next two deaths are him just getting caught out in the river. Again, if renekton isn't doing the engaging, then he is really easy to catch out, and he should have prioritized some deeper wards to see this play coming. But I will say I respect how he understood he was dead and that he didn't try to run to his team, which would have gotten them killed as well. Usually running to your team is the move if you can turn the fight, but with Braum and Varus being stronger than Kai'Sa and Leona here, it would have likely been a 3-for-0 fight, probably ending the game, and he would have just baited his team. Again, for the third death, Perkz is trying to make a play in the river to set up that juicy renekton Nidalee combo, but it just didn't work. The Karma shield was too big and Xin Zhao just had items to kill him after Karma stunned him. He wasn't able to use his empowered W and tried using his Q to heal up and maybe have a miraculous escape, but that didn't work out either. And I think it's here that we should start to note the genius behind the inting. Most professional players are worried about performing well to keep their job, and let's just say that constantly dying does not help with this image management. But Perkz is in an elevated position. He has one of the biggest contracts in the LCS and is such a good player that he doesn't need to quote-unquote prove himself, and this allows him to try and make plays that will actually help his team win. Professional play is brutal, and players are good enough to take a small lead and snowball it into a victory, and if you get off on the wrong foot, many players will play so safe and so timid that they just bleed out and eventually lose a big team fight because they're down 6k gold. Perkz is smart enough to know that his team does not have a late game team comp, and waiting to 5v5 at Baron is just not the play here. He needs to keep trying to find advantageous fights for him and Blabber so that they can regain their lead and try to snowball off that. So although it doesn't work out incredibly well for C9 this game, Perkz has the right idea, and C9 is lucky to have a bold and intelligent playmaker like Perkz. So Perkz's 4th death is actually pretty lame, and I'm convinced that this play actually lost the game for them. So Dragon has not yet been taken by either team, so they're about to team fight over it, but C9 knows that they can't just straight up fight for it, so they try to make a bush play. But before they ever enter that brush, they need to check TP timers for the top lane, and they should know that Gnar has TP while Malphite does not, and if he teleports down, there is a 0% chance that C9 wins a 4v5, especially when they're down this much gold. Okay, so they sneak into this brush, and I like the idea of some guerrilla warfare going on. If they get a pick, they can probably just scare the other team away and secure a free dragon, but unfortunately, Leona blew her load way too soon. He was clearly walking up to the brush to ward, but you gotta wait like half a second longer so that your melee renekton can get in range. Leona goes in, barely uses her stun too late so that the Braum has time to ult, which slows Perkz, not allowing him to use his W to shred the shield on Braum. These tiny errors turned a winnable fight into a complete wipe, pushing C9 farther behind in gold and losing the dragon. So although this fight barely worked in Hunter T's favor, the idea was there. They couldn't have a straight up fight, but they did have enough CC that they could try to chain together to hopefully sneak in a kill and rob 100T of the first dragon. A straight up 4v4 would have been a loss as we end up seeing here, but their approach to this fight shows that they actually think about their plays instead of just randomly going in. Another thing I want to point out is Perkz itemization. It is clear that Gore Drinker is like the best item on renekton, and when that item got buffed, it made renekton super strong, leading to all of his recent nerfs. But in this game, when he is so far behind, that item makes 0 sense. His team needs more CC and gap closers to get to the backline of Gnar, Varus, and Karma in order to get some shutdown gold and wiggle their way back into this game. So instead of blindly building Gore Drinker, he does Stridebreaker instead, which offers less damage and healing, but gives his team a much better chance of getting a pick, which could help them win a small skirmish or allow them to get an objective. And Perkz' last death is just, well, unfortunate. They sort of lost this game in draft, but him being behind so much gold and XP just makes this so much harder. He is kited to oblivion and doesn't have the resources to get on the back line to lay down some CC. The game goes downhill from here, but the moral of the story is that Perkz actually thought about his plays, his itemization, and he tried to figure out ways to help his team win when most players would have just autopiloted till the Nexus exploded, trying to preserve their KDA so that they didn't look like they played that bad. At the very least, this game shows that Perkz cares and tried his hardest to win. So those of you saying he should be benched need to curb your Karen. Thank you so much for watching.